Morning.
Good morning. We're waiting on our guest.
Oh, okay.
It's about time to start. We are inside of the news right now. Hopefully he comes.
Have you heard from him this morning?
Well, we messaged on Facebook last night, and I once again sent him the link. Let me message him right quick. Uh, you look nice as always. And shout out to everybody who's watching on our live feed.
Hey, hair's looking like a poodle, but oh well. Hope everyone is making plans to get out and vote. If you haven't already, I don't know what the wait time has been for the lines, but
Well, it's basically, and I think we're getting ready to stand by.
okay.
I think we are. For me, it was around about 30, 40 minutes. The stuff open. Okay, and we are now time to go live. So let's do this. KLK 102.5 FM. Good morning to you on your Monday. It's October 26, 2020. This is Community Conversations. Care to Wonder is with you via Zoom. Also have Kabila Jones, host of Community Conversations. Our guest has not arrived yet. It's supposed to be Dan Whitfield. Dan Whitfield was actually going to run for the U.S. Senate, but there was some issues that came up and he was not able to get on the ballot for this go round, but he's still staying active in the political process and has plans to run in the year 2022. So since the interview was already scheduled, he did want to go forward with him. I'm actually about to message him to see if he's still coming. I know that as of last night, he said that he would. So right before we went live, Gobila was asking about early voting. Of course, early voting has been very brisk. I know when I went to vote, it took about 40 minutes. The slowest part is, just getting around the building. The line is typically wrapped around the building, but they've been getting through pretty quickly. And he said, 1 second. Once you get inside, it didn't take long at all. Now, it is socially distanced inside. They do have the markers every 6 feet where you have to stand while you wait to go up and present your ID and all of that. And then they give you, your thing to go to the voting machine. Of course, record-breaking turnout. So far, I think it said almost 11,000 people have voted. In fact, let me just pull go back on the KLK Facebook, and I can give you the most recent totals on who's voted. By the way, shout out to everybody who has downloaded our app. If you download the KLK app every day, you have had the election totals sent directly to your phone as soon as we get those. So that's just one of the many features that you can get for having the KLK app downloaded. So if you're not downloaded it yet, go ahead and go to your app store and download it immediately so you can stay on top of all things KLK. Okay, so the grand total so far for Jonesboro, 8,091, and Lake City, 3,034. So, yep, over 11,000 people total in Craighead County have voted. So, shout out to everyone that has voted so far. Of course, KLK and the Voice of Arkansas Minority Advocacy Council, we do not endorse, support, or oppose any candidate for office. We will not tell you who to vote for. We always do this for informational purposes only, but we do appreciate everyone that is exercising the right to vote. Again, we're waiting on our guests who should be joining us shortly. Also, do want to take a moment of personal privilege and lift up our friends at KASU Radio. Their news director, Jonathan Reeves' mother passed away, and so definitely keep the Reeves family and the KASU family in your thoughts and your prayers. Have another announcement. If I could find it, Q, you might have this on your page. It's and we have Mr. Whitfield with us. So, Q, I'm gonna let you take it off so I can go finish getting my coffee. So as soon as we get in the boat. All right, and I don't see a screen on here. Let me check this gallery view.
I see his screen, but he's muted.
I don't even see a screen. Mr. Whitfield, are you with us?
He's muted.
If you could unmute. Are you with us, Mr. Whitfield?
Hi, good morning, sir. How are you doing?
Oh, pretty good. All right, so what welcomed you to the show. As we mentioned at the top of the hour, you were originally a candidate for the United States Senate, but you ran into some problems with getting on the ballot. So just kind of, first of all, tell us who you are and your background, and then kind of go into your story of your Senate run that you attempted this past election cycle.
Yeah, sure. Good morning. My name is Dan Whitfield. I'm a progressive independent candidate here in Arkansas, and I was running against Senator Tom Cotton for the United States Senate. But unfortunately, different parties have different rules to gain ballot access. And as an independent, I was forced to collect my signatures for ballot access during a fixed 90-day window, which unfortunately just happened to be from February 1st until May 1st of 2020, which was during the height of the COVID-19 scare. So
Okay.
it affected our ability to collect signatures. We lost on March 13th. Governor Asa Hutchinson issued an order of the state to declare state of emergency, and we lost about 60% of our collection time. So
Oh my
we
goodness.
only had about 60% of the signatures required, and then we got into a whole big legal battle for ballot access, and it was quite a mess.
So it just wasn't worth the hassle to try to continue on.
Well, we actually did everything possible until I ended up suspending my campaign a few weeks ago,
Okay.
where actually we still have our hearing for ballot access, but the Attorney General was able to delay it until after the election, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, again, here at Kelly K, we don't support endorse or oppose any candidate. So, no personal feelings here, but I'm sure there are some people who really wanted to see you run and who would have supported you um, in your endeavors. And so, even though you're not running, what were some issues that you saw Arkansas face that you wanted to address on the federal level?
So some of the big issues that I supported, number one, the most important in my opinion is Medicare for all,
Okay.
because so many Arkansans are filing bankruptcy for medical debt. So many people are losing everything, their cars, their homes, their retirements, just because they got sick. And that's after working their entire lives, doing everything right, contributing to our society, and then they get sick and they lose everything. And that's just not okay. And one of the biggest pushbacks I get for Medicare for all is, how are we going to pay for it? Nothing's free. And of course, it's not free. We will pay for it, but it will be substantially less than what we're paying now for private insurance.
Okay.
Um, a short example I like to use is the cost of Medicare for all is 4% of your income after 29,000. So the average Arkansan household income is about 40,000 minus 29 leaves you with 11. 4% of that means the average Arkansan family will pay $440 per year to cover their entire household for medical, dental, and vision. I mean, that's worlds better than what we're dealing with now.
I mean, some people are probably paying $400 a month individually on
Yeah.
their policies. Wow.
So
Um,
I'm going to ask this question since you brought up Medicare for all. As you know, it's been very difficult. In fact, healthcare in general has been very difficult. We're actually coming upon, and you actually brought this up, I believe you may have brought this up on your page, the 10-year anniversary of the Affordable Care Act. And if anyone remembers during that time, it was very difficult to pass. Why do you think that it is so difficult to pass healthcare reform when healthcare is one of those things, just like the environment, the military, something that everybody touches and affects, but yet it's so difficult to get past. And even bringing up something like Medicare for all meets such fierce resistance.
Well, and it honestly, it's a perfect example of why I'm running for office and why the kind of change that I want. It's all about corruption. The problem is the people that are voting on these pieces of legislation are taking money from the health and pharma industries. So when they have a financial incentive, they have people loading up their bank accounts with fat stacks of cash in order to vote against legislation like Medicare for all, legislation that'll actually help their constituents. They're just more worried about where their next bribe is going to come from. And if we could start to remove that financial incentive, get rid of some of these lobbyists that are hurting us in these industries like healthcare, gun control, and things like that, then maybe we can start to have our representatives actually represent us for a change and not those donors.
Now, there's some people, and again, I take no stance one way or the other, but there are people when you mention those entities, they kind of, their feathers get a little ruffled. And what do you say to those people that, like, here you here you are putting down this, that, and whatever, especially when it comes to guns. I will say this for me, I'm not against guns. I just don't own one. That's just my personal preference. But hey,
Well,
and
I think
I'm
what
not.
you have, well, not to cut you off, I think what you have in place is because of the language of the Second Amendment, the clause that says shall not be infringed. You have people who, consider that absolute. But, and I've asked candidates before me, where do you draw the line? Because technically, if you say the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, then that means that technically children can buy guns. But most people with common sense would say, well, no, we don't need 6-year-olds out buying guns. But if the Constitution says shall not be infringed, and that's literally interpreted under any circumstances, then you potentially can leave the door completely wide open to anyone and everyone, being able to get a weapon for any reason, and not even just a gun. So let's say I had Jeff Bezos money, richest man in the world, and I want to buy me a fleet of nuclear bombs, or let's just say Jeff Bezos himself wants to protect the Amazon compound. So I need this nuclear arsenal to protect Amazon. If you take that interpretation of the Constitution, you can't stop him if he's got the money, which he does, to buy those nuclear bombs, because that's what he would feel that he needs to protect himself.
Well, gun legislation is a really hot button topic because it's going to, for the most part, there are a lot of voters, especially here in Arkansas, that can be a one issue voter, and gun control could be their issue. Now, what I have to say to it is, number one, I don't need the NRA to tell me if I can or cannot own a gun. I don't think the government is going around right now saying that, oh, we're going to come to your doors and we're going to take your firearms. I mean, I own some firearms. I do support the Second Amendment, but I also support common sense gun legislation, such as if I can't go to Bass Pro and purchase a firearm because I can't pass a background check, then I should not be able to go to Arms List and meet up with someone online, meet them in a Walmart parking lot, give them a couple $100 and get a firearm in my hand without a background check being performed. We have to make sure that we are performing background checks on all firearm sales, including private sales, if it's not a licensed FFL. But we also have to make sure we're not overburdening the sellers by making like a $25 or $50 background check fee. It needs to just be a regular processing fee, like paying your bill over the phone, maybe a couple bucks, just to make sure that when you're selling a firearm to someone, they're not a felon. They have the legal rights to purchase a firearm.
Yeah. All right. And so, with kind of going back just a little bit, real quick on the Medicaid for all.
Medicare for all.
Medicare. What about the age? Like even now, there are some people who they may meet the income requirement, they don't meet the age requirements, and so there's all these ins and outs of it. And so it's like there are people who just really need some help, but they just simply cannot afford a private plan. So how would it work for them?
So basically what Medicare for All does is there is nobody who will not qualify for Medicare for All. So if you are, say, a minor and you're making, or say, you got emancipated or whatever, and you're 17, 18, 19, 20, it would be similar to Medicaid right now. If you're making under $29,000 a year, you don't have to pay for anything. You're still getting your health insurance. And there is no age limit for Medicare for All. So if you're 18 years old and you're making, say, $40,000 a year, you just pay 4% after 29,000 and you have your insurance. Now, Medicare for All is a terrible name because it's nothing like Medicare. Just like defunding the police is a terrible term because defunding the police does not mean abolishing it. It's more like law enforcement reform. So with Medicare for All, it should have been called like healthcare for all. And the whole point of it is to make sure everybody has insurance, that your health insurance isn't employment based, because right now, especially with COVID-19, we're seeing millions and millions and millions of people who've lost their jobs and subsequently have lost their health insurance.
And I always add to that, like in my situation, my tried to get insurance through my spouse, and it was just way too expensive. Like they was going to like take out $500-600 a month.
Mhm.
I mean per pay period, twice a month, just to
Oh
cover
my
me. Now
God.
if we had kids, it'd be much cheaper. So actually, through the organization that owns KLEK, had to pay a private policy, which I pay about $200 a month, but I have a $12,500 deductible. That's the only way to make it affordable, which pretty much means, unless I just have like a major surgery, I'm pretty much still paying out of pocket for just about anything. I mean, it covers like most of doctor visits, but the point is, and even if, and every time they open up the open enrollment, I shop around for plans. There's just nothing even remotely close to even being at that price. So it just simply not affordable. But again, it just doesn't seem to be an appetite to fix it.
Yeah, it's really rough. My wife and I, we work at JB Hunt, and we have the same exact situation you're dealing with. So right now, the way that we have private health insurance, the people who really get the shaft are the working class, the middle class people. Because if you still qualify for Medicaid, then it's different. Although at the same time, Medicaid still sucks because, say, if you want to have your child get in to see a dentist, it can be 1 or 2 months before you get the appointment, which is different. But it's the working class who's getting the shaft. And my wife and I, we were paying $860 a month, trying to do everything the right way to just insure myself, my wife, and our 7-year-old daughter. $860 a month for a $1,500 deductible. So we have to give Blue Cross Blue Shield $11,000 a year before they even help us. It doesn't make sense. And then, of course, if you are making several hundred thousands of dollars a year, if you get sick, you just go see the doctor, pay the bill. It's not a big deal. It's not a huge percentage of your income. So this is really going to help the working class. It's going to help the people that really need it the most. And a great like lower middle class would be about, say, $100,000 a year income. At $100,000 a year minus 29 is 71, 4%. You're looking at about $237 a month for an Arkansas family making about 100 grand a year. So it's still substantially cheaper than having to pay for Blue Cross Blue Shield or whichever private insurance your company goes through.
And what are some other issues that you were going to run on and try to tackle in reference to Arkansas?
So another really important one that I think is extremely important here in Arkansas is the federal decriminalization of cannabis, including nationally expunging cannabis convictions.
Okay.
So we had just approved a new LaSalle prison here in Arkansas, $169 million.
For prison?
A new prison, and it's only going to house 500 people. $169 million. So in Arkansas, for y'all that don't know, we actually have one of the highest childhood poverty statistics here in the country, where 1 out of every 4 children here in Arkansas go to bed with a hungry stomach. 25% of the children here live in poverty, and we're worried about spending $169 million on a private prison. We could just expunge 500 cannabis convictions, and there we go. We just saved $169 million that we could put towards feeding hungry children. There are just so many better uses for our tax dollars than how we are allocating it right now. So I think that's a very important one.
Barbara, we have 2 minutes left in this segment.
Okay, well, through conversations with an organization here, Future for Felons, the leader, tell me all again. His name is
Evangelist Alube.
Yes, but I was trying to come up with his title. But anyway, long story short, we have been talking a lot about.
I don't think he has a title. I think it's just the leader.
The prison systems and the funding. And I recently watched a video on YouTube talking about a particular person who has some invested stock in a prison because his company supplies the phone service. And so it's like, there's a lot of controversy, a lot of issues. We need to start looking at the paper trail, the money trail, and really look at who's funding these prisons and what, how does it serve them, and make some different decisions in our lives. I'm just gonna say that and leave it alone. It's the nicest
You got
place.
you got about 1 minute to respond to that. Then we have to go to break.
Yeah. So, and again, it comes back to corruption, to financial incentive. And unfortunately, with our prison system right now and the way that it's been privatized, corporations have more an incentive to keep people in cells locked up rather than rehabilitating them and getting people back out into our society where they belong. And we got to get rid of private prisons. We need to make sure that we are using prisons to rehabilitate. And I think just expunging cannabis convictions is going to be huge towards helping our kids and families around the entire country get back to normal, because you shouldn't get stuck with, as a kid, you get a seed or a stem in your car and now you have a felony, and now you're having a hard time finding employment for the rest of your life, and you can't get back to contributing to society. And Johnny Depp said it best in Blow. He went into
All
prison
right,
with
Dan, we're going to have to get ready to leave it there. I'm sorry, we're getting ready to go up in
no
this break. We
problem.
are speaking with Dan Whitfield, former candidate for the U.S. Senate. But guess what? When we come back from the other side of the break, we're going to talk about his future plans, which may include another Senate run as well. Got some questions in the Facebook comments. We will ask those questions also when we come back from the break. Now, for those of you that are watching on our Facebook Live, the Facebook Live will continue to roll. But for those of you listening on the radio, we will be back in just a few minutes. Stay with us. This is Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM.
So please finish your statement. We're still live on Facebook, so go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. Johnny Depp, he said it best on Blow, where he went into prison with a minor in cannabis and came out with a master's in cocaine. And we're having this problem where we're incarcerating these, kids who may have made a mistake when they were younger, and we're turning them into criminals through our prison system. And that's just wrong. That's not what it's supposed to be, but that's just what we've turned it into. It's a
So
shame.
are mandatory minimums still on the books? Is that still in effect?
It depends on it depends.
And
It's something we need to get rid of. Absolutely. We shouldn't have mandatory minimum sentences.
okay. I try not to get too caught up in the rabbit hole of news and all that stuff, but I try to stay also current and looking at different stories, seeing how people with different crimes are getting treated differently. And it's not all about race. However, sometimes social economic status comes into play. I'll put it like that. And unfortunately, the majority are of different ethnic groups, but that's not a
if you're poor
that's a
or
discussion
a
for another
minority,
day.
you get shafted.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just what the research and the evidence has shown. And I know this is not that conversation today, but again, we do need to overall look at the bills and policies in place, see who's affected. Um, we just know right here in Jonesboro, people who are on the low end of the income, totem pole, they get hurt the most versus those in a higher bracket. I'm not trying to pick on anybody. I'm just stating the facts from
It's
personal
very
experience.
true. Yeah, absolutely. And it comes back to the war on drugs. When Reagan started the war on drugs, it disproportionately targeted those low income neighborhoods. And unfortunately, at the time, it was predominantly minority neighborhoods. And it's just, that was the whole point of it. And it's just, we've made so many mistakes now in the history of our society. We have
Got 1
racism.
minute before we go back on radio.
Oh, we've got a long ways to go, but I think that enough people are starting to wake up and see what's going on, and a lot of these people are starting to run for office, that hopefully we can actually start to get some change soon.
And when you were running, or as you were, announcing, were you ever labeled or called a socialist, or anyone try to throw that label out at you?
No, not necessarily. I do support Bernie Sanders, and people call him a socialist, but I consider myself a social capitalist. I mean, I do believe in
30
capitalism.
seconds.
We have to get to the point where there are just some industries where we have to put people before profits, and healthcare is a perfect one. You shouldn't be putting money above lives ever.
All right, stand by. We're going to get ready to go back live on the radio. Appreciate the conversation. So stand by, and we'll be going back live in just a moment.
We could talk for hours.
All right, here we go, y'all. And we're back on KLK 102.5 FM with our guest, Dan Whitfield, former candidate for the United States Senate. Let's go ahead and check out some of the Facebook comments, and then we'll get back to our discussion. I know some people are saying that they've been having some issues with the live feed. Don't know what to say. It's kind of cutting in and out on me as well. That's with technology. But, you know, once we get off the air, you can always go back and rewatch the interview, because right now I can't really control what the live does. All right, Vicki Lewis. Actually, first of all, I get to her question. Shanquetta Cunningham says, I am thoroughly enjoying this conversation. And Vicki Lewis has two questions. First, what makes you different from any others want to be a U.S. Senator? How can you make things better? And how can you help nonprofits? Before you answer, let me give you a little background about Vicki. Vicki is with a local nonprofit, Diego Ranch. They are friends of KLEK. They offer equine therapy for people dealing with depression or people with special needs issues. A very good group of people, and they're trying to raise funding to build a new facility. So she jumps on everybody's feed, you know, asking for support for the great work that they do. But again, the question is, what makes you different from any other U.S. Senate candidate, and what can you do to help local nonprofits in the state of Arkansas?
So I'm just a regular, hardworking class Arkansan. I'm not a politician. I never wanted to be a politician, but I had a catalyst in my life where Bernie Sanders, he said something that really touched me. He said he started the political revolution. He started a movement to take our government back from special interests. And it's now up to us to stand up and continue that movement. And that's when I decided that I would start researching my representatives, such as Tom Cotton, and see where their money was coming from and how they were voting in response. And that's when I decided I had to do something and I would have to run for office. I'm a full-time student. I'm still working on my bachelor's. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I'm a working class guy. And I think that our representatives should answer to their constituents, should listen to their constituents, and should be the extension of their voice in the legislative process, which is why I have a direct democracy platform where I will actually submit 12 bills per year created by Arkansans, where people can go online, submit a suggestion, people can vote on whether it's a good or a bad idea. And once a month, I'll take the bill with the most good ideas, and I will be able to give Arkansans a direct voice into the legislative process.
Okay. Do you feel that there is enough of that communication with our U.S. senators? I have seen comments when they make different posts. I'm not going to call out anybody's name, but when the different senators make posts on social media, people are under the comments like, I haven't seen you, I tried to come to your office, I tried to call your phone, email, blah, blah, no response. So what do you say to that?
But before he answers that, I just want to add, I know that Senator Boozman has an office here in Jonesboro City Hall. Now, I've never actually seen him in the office, but usually your representatives usually will have field offices in your more larger cities, such as Jonesboro. But I just want to put that out there before Dan answered the question.
Mm-hmm. So I have pledged to hold 12 town halls here in Arkansas every single year. I want to make sure that I'm actually getting out and interacting with my constituents so that I can listen to their concerns firsthand so that I can best represent them. One thing I do that's unique is I normally do a weekly live stream update Q&A where you can go on my Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and you can actually go on, ask me questions live, and I'll answer your questions live. And I think that's really important, something that more of our representatives should be doing. I handle all my own social media, my own emails, phone calls, text messages.
Wow.
It's a full-time job, but I want to make sure that I'm actually listening to people and representing them. So that's one thing that does put me apart that I think we should do, more often with our candidates. Another thing is my campaign is completely funded by individual donors. We were able to raise about $75,000 as an independent without assured ballot access, being stuck in this legal battle. And 80% of those contributions were from small individual contributions between $0 and $200, and 20% were between $200 and $1,000. So I didn't take any money from special interests, billionaires, giant corporations, or political parties even. And it's a grassroots movement that is by the people for the people so that we can return our government to the people.
I want to ask you this because, we hear about campaigns raising millions and millions of dollars, and I understand advertising costs. There are costs associated with running for any office. However, do you feel that if we, the people, look at those who are not necessarily raising millions from corporations, look at those candidates in a more serious light and say, okay, maybe they do represent our best interests and we should really give them more of a chance?
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, I never realized how expensive it is to run for office until I started running for office. But also, we are in a new era of campaigning and of politics where we're being forced to stay home, to knock it out in giant events and spread COVID-19, where you don't have to go spend $500,000 on a television commercial because the majority of the population is on social media, and social media advertising is substantially less. It's about spending the money that you have appropriately, making sure you spend it in the best possible way to reach the most amount of people, which is why you can go on my website and click an expense tab, danforarkansas.com, and you can see where I've spent every single penny donated to my campaign so that you can make sure it's being spent in the best ways possible. But we're in a new era. You don't have to raise 5 million, $10 million to get a whole bunch of TV ads. You can advertise on social media and on YouTube and Hulu and all these other platforms for a lot less.
Okay.
Now, speaking of websites, there was another website. Was replacetomcotton.com originally your website?
Yes, sir. That is my own.
Okay, I know now it points to the Ricky Harrington campaign, but was that originally your website?
It is my website and it is still my domain. It's just as soon as I suspended my campaign, I do not believe in the libertarian platform, but I do believe Tom Cotton is one of the most dangerous men in America. So I'm trying to do my part to help Ricky Harrington out, and I did forward my domain to his website to help him.
All right, so let's move on. So you announced on your page that you are exploring a run in 2022, challenging Senator John Boozman. So what steps are you taking now to ensure that you do actually get on the ballot for that race?
So I have announced my name is Dan Whitfield. I'm the independent candidate running against Senator John Boozman for United States Senate in 2022. It is official. I've already filed with the FEC. It's tough because as an independent, again, it's a fixed collection period. I wouldn't even be able to begin collecting my 10,000 signatures until February of 2022. So we still have a giant coalition of people. I have tons of people in my volunteer groups and pages. We're going to do whatever it takes to make sure we will be on the ballot. And we were able to roll over about $20,000 into our new campaign. So COVID-19 won't be an issue. We weren't even able to hire paid canvassers to get signatures because those companies had stopped collecting signatures during that period.
Okay.
So we'll do what it takes to make sure we have ballot access. And it's still up in the air whether or not I will run as an independent or if I'll run as a Democrat. I'm still trying to make that decision. It's probably not going to come anytime soon. I'll probably wait until the filing period next year to make that decision. But we will be on the ballot no matter what.
And of course, just letting you know that when that time comes, we will invite you back on, because we do invite all candidates for all races to come on KLEK. So this one interview that you definitely got coming in 2022.
I appreciate it, sir. I really do.
So I want to ask about education. That's very important to me. I know Arkansas falls behind in a lot of areas. And so our access of our our state representatives that are in Little Rock, that are running for offices in Little Rock. So for you running for the national level, what are some changes you would like to make or can possibly advocate for to ensure that our Arkansas students are on track to be able to compete on a global level?
So one of what I think is a really large problem with our educational system is that only about 10% of a school's funding comes from federal funding. 90% of a school's funding is going to come from local community property taxes. Now, at the federal level, all I could do is try to help increase the educational budget that we do put out to schools, because education is one of the most important things in our society. Really, we should be paying more for education than we are for military spending, because
prisons.
Yeah, and prisons. And And one thing I would like to see at the state level that I would be unable to do necessarily at the federal level, except with suggesting ideas, is I think we should actually pool all of our educational funding together and then distribute it evenly throughout the state for students and staff. Because we have this really unique problem here in Arkansas where we have some of the best schools in America. We have some of the highest funded schools in America, but at the same time, in more rural areas, we have some of the lowest standard schools with the lowest funding. And we need to make sure to spread that out so that every single child in Arkansas has the same educational opportunities to move forward with their lives and to be able to contribute to society, to have good paying careers and to be able to pursue the American dream. And we need to make sure our state legislators and our governor and our state officials are making progress in moving in that direction.
Now, when you talk about redistributing or distributing the funding in a more appropriate way, would that also include adjusting the curriculum to also make sure that all students are getting what they need instead of teaching just this basic cut and paste curriculum? And then also paying teacher, paying teachers more and incorporating more specialty teachers to meet the needs of students who learn in different ways.
So I think that will kind of come back to increasing federal funding for education in states, because we can increase that federal funding to raise teacher salaries. I believe the average teacher salary in Arkansas is somewhere around $36,000 a year. And these are the most important jobs. These are the people who are molding our children, who are helping our children get to the point where they can be the best that they can possibly be. And we are just not treating them that way. So we absolutely need to increase teacher salaries. And I had actually spoken with the head of the Rural Teachers Association here in Arkansas a little while ago, trying to figure out the best ways to increase teacher salary, because you can't just flip a switch and increase their salaries. That's not how it works. And when it came back to bringing better economy to Arkansas, bringing better jobs, making it so that people are paying more taxes because they're making substantially more amounts of money. And there's not a whole lot I can do at the federal level for that. But what I would like to see done is I would like to see Arkansas become the #1 producer, exporter, and processor of hemp in America, because we used to be the #3 producer of hemp back before it became illegal, and it's legal again. And that Farm Bill of 2017, we can do this. And then we can start processing hemp into biofuel, into building materials, baskets, plastic. There's all sorts of different things you can do with hemp. And then what we could do is we could require these processing facilities only be built in counties that have low incomes and average. Like say we have counties that still have less than $25,000 household income averages. Require those facilities there.
Lee County. I'm from Lee County, which
I'm
is
from Phillips County,
in that Delta area. So Lee, St. Francis, Phillips, any of those little counties over there that are close to the Mississippi River, yeah, they need help.
And eastern counties have the most fertile land in America. It's a shame not to be putting it to better use where we can help build these communities through it.
And, just to speak a little bit more on hemp, for those who don't know, it's a recyclable, it's a renewable material. I've seen so many clothing and shoes and a variety of items. I've even seen rope or twine or whatever you want to call it. So there's a lot of products that can be made from it. We need to find a way to we need spaces that will process that material. And I'm sure there are other renewable materials that we produce in Arkansas. I'm sure there's a way to use the byproduct of the wheat and the corn and soybeans and whatever, so yeah. And that goes into the environmental category, which not a lot of people like to talk about. I don't understand.
And that doesn't even bring up the CBD oil. We all see CBD stores popping up on every single street corner, it seems like. There's just so much opportunity. And I'm not talking about cannabis, I'm talking about hemp. And we could get into the green rush and go from one of the worst economies in the country to being one of the highest producing economies in the country, just from making a simple switch. And one of the problems with it is when I went to the Farmers Appreciation Fish Fry last year, down in Pine Bluff, a lot of these farmers want to get into it, but it's so expensive they can't afford to. So that comes back into reallocating are agricultural subsidies where 70% of them are going to 10% of business that are the largest corporations. So if we can reallocate some of these federal subsidies to agriculture into going to smaller farms, then we can help make this a reality and make it actually happen. And that I could do at the federal level.
And there, again, if you create more jobs, more opportunities for economic growth, you could potentially reduce the crime rate, reduce the need for more prisons or to pack the prisons we already have. I know it's not that simple. For those people think I'm simple minded, I'm not. But there are better solutions to the way we're doing things now. We have to do things different, or else we're creating this, prison to pipeline. Prison pipeline to prison.
School to prison pipeline.
Thank you. I saw a meme on Facebook, and it was a split picture. It was like detention and then youth, like a detention center. So it's like if you start putting kids, treating them a certain way when they're young, it's only going to lead to this other entity over here. So anyway, I have a degree in sociology, so my brain is always on fire. I'm trying to calm down.
Well, we need someone like you to run for office.
No.
I feel like we have a problem. We have too many lawyers representing us in office and not enough of a wide variety of people like sociologists, psychologists, historians, economists. We need a wider variety of people that are understanding how legislation being passed is going to affect the different aspects of our society.
I just love, being behind the scenes, doing some research, and then here, look, this is where your money needs to go. This is how you can help improve our society. Because if you help improve the quality of life for one individual or a group of people in a certain bracket, it benefits the community as a whole. And just think of the domino effect it will create. You start increasing the quality of life for these little pockets of individuals and groups. Look at, in a few years, our whole state is improving. That's, me and my bubble, but hey.
Domino effect. We just gotta
it can be
push
done.
the dominoes.
I just think we have to put forth the effort. If we want to see change, we have to start putting forth the effort instead of shooting it down before we even try. But that's my take on it.
Always goes to be the change in which you see. Got about 2.5 minutes left in this segment.
So I'm sorry, go ahead. Anything else you would like to highlight in our 2 minutes?
Well, of course, you kind of mentioned it. Climate change is extremely important. We need to make sure that we are becoming a leader in renewable energies here in Arkansas. We do have areas that are high rated for, say, wind energy and wind turbines up in our mountainous areas. We need to be making sure we can get solar on every home in America. Just imagine, we spend trillions of dollars, trillions on subsidizing the fossil fuel industry. What if we stopped subsidizing the fossil fuel industry, say for 3 years, and instead spent those trillions of dollars putting a solar panel on every single home in America? That would help our environment. It would lower the reliance on fossil fuels. It would lower our utilities. It would just be a win-win. And then we would have to pay less in subsidies in the future to fossil fuel. So there are a lot of different things we can do, but again, it just comes back to corruption. It comes back to our legislators taking money from the fossil fuel and natural gas industries and trying to get representatives into office who have the ability to vote on legislation that aren't going to work for special interests, but are instead going to work for us, are going to help prevent our climate from getting into this catastrophe level thing where we're seeing hurricanes all the time. We're seeing giant tornadoes several times a year, flooding. We're seeing all these natural disasters beginning to happen in Arkansas, and it's just going to get worse if we don't do something about it now.
I can hear the comments right now. Because I have a comment. I know we're getting ready for a break, but I have
you got about 45 seconds to do it.
The last time somebody mentioned solar panels and renewable energy, I don't know if it was I think it was at one of the debates, either on our show or the vice president, whatever. Somebody was like, you spend too much money up front. They didn't see the benefit because you do have to spend up front. I mean, that's just the nature of the
basically the comments, and I've seen this before, basically that you would spend it would take a lot of oil to produce the components.
The carbon footprint producing the panels.
So, it becomes a question of, does the net energy gain actually outweigh the cost? And with that, we got to leave it there. We're going to get ready to go into our second break, but don't go anywhere. We're going to be back in a few as we wrap up with Dan Whitfield. This is Community Conversations on KLEK on 2.5 FM.
So, on another note, we hear the word socialist thrown around so much. Do you feel that we need to have a broader discussion as a country on what it really means, what socialism really means, what capitalism really means, and how right now we are such an the balance is so off scale, it's ridiculous. Like it's anyway,
We're
it's
the wealthiest nation in the history of the world, and at the same time, we have the greatest wealth inequality in the history of the world. Where I believe it's just like, was it 4 men have the same amount of wealth as half the population on our planet? Um, at the same time, we have children that starve to death, people that can't afford their prescription drugs, that die because they can't get the medicine they need. It is a really big problem, and again, it all just comes down to the main problem is that our government has been purchased by special interests, and we have to take our government back. We no longer live in a democracy or a representative republic because our representatives no longer represent us. We live in an oligarch, which is where a few people control our government. And we see that not only in the legislative branch, but we're seeing that in the executive branch, where our executive cabinet right now is full of industries regulating themselves. We have ExxonMobil CEOs regulating the fossil fuel industry. We have Goldman Sachs CEOs regulating Wall Street. We have, oh my gosh, we have the fossil fuel industry regulating the Environmental Protection Agency. It's just insane. And the only way we're going to take our government back is by getting regular working class people into office that aren't going to take those bribes, that aren't going to take special interests money, and are going to focus on what's best for their constituents, what's best for us.
we hear a lot of talk about what the founding fathers wanted, this, that, and whatever. For most Black people, we really don't have a dog in the fight because anyway, that's another story. However, do you feel that some people need to go back and really look at the beginning of, okay, this is why the government was founded, why these different entities were put into place, these different governing bodies, like going back to fundamentals.
I mean, they were put there as checks and balances, and they no longer balance and check each other. It's just all one team. It's one side, and that side's not on our team. One of the things about the Constitution is it was written about 250 years ago, and a lot has changed in the last 100 years, the last 50 years, heck, in the last 20 years. So it is about time to go back and hold a new constitutional convention and bring in a bunch of these different professionals like doctors, nurses, sociologists, this historians, economists, and this whole group of people, and start looking at how the Constitution was written, how it affects us now, and starting to update it. And a really big thing with me in that, another part of my platform, is our digital data, our privacy with our digital data. So right now, our internet service providers monitor what we do online. They collect that information, they store it, and then they sell it to third-party advertisers. It's not our information anymore. They're using the microphones on our phones to monitor what we're doing. That's why if you have your phone and you're outside somewhere at the store talking to your wife about a trip to Hawaii, you come home and you hop on Facebook on your laptop, and what's going to pop up on your advertising? A trip to Hawaii. And we need to make sure.
Use that. We gotta get ready to come back.
Yes, sir.
This will be our 5-minute wrap up. And we're back on Community Conversation on KLEK 102.5 FM with our guest, Dan Whitfield. Been enjoying this conversation. Let's go to our Facebook Live comments, see if we have any more. Got a little dialogue between Vicky Lewis and Shanquetta Cunningham. Gail Raspberry said hemp is the future. All right, so Kabila.
All right. I've really been enjoying this conversation. I know we could probably talk for hours on different issues, especially issues that Arkansas faces. So um, I know that you already have a platform that you are running on. If you were to run against Cotton, will you keep those same issues, and what are some additional issues you would like to add for the next cycle?
So I have a lot of issues in my policy. If
Okay.
you go to danforarkansas.com and you click policy, you're going to see a list of like 25 different things.
Okay.
And I've been told, oh, get rid of all of that. Just pick one or two or three things and focus on those three things. Well, that's an old type of politics. I don't think that that's what we need to be focusing on right now, especially with what we're seeing with COVID-19 and this pandemic. We have a lot of issues and we need to address them all, every single one of them. And I'm going to keep all my policy stances, of course. There are some new things that uh, COVID-19 has really brought forward to us. I work in automation, and before COVID-19, we were looking at an estimated 40% unemployment by 2035 due to automation and automating people's jobs. Well,
And
we've
that's good, job. I'm glad you brought that up because I know two of the industries that's going to really affect that will be the industry that you're in, truck driving, and one that you're already starting to see some movement in, fast food with the kiosk at McDonald's.
Mhm. Oh, it's a matter of time until robots are making the food too. So what that
Oh
brings in
no.
is we have to worry about a UBI. Eventually, we're going to have a universal basic income. And I was really waiting to talk about it until it got to that point where we were looking at a 40% unemployment. But you know what COVID-19 has done? It has brought about a pretty close to a 40% unemployment rate to America. And we need to start talking about it now in the form of a stimulus package until the pandemic is over. The CARES Act, I know Tom Cotton loves to spout how wonderful it was, but unfortunately, it wasn't wonderful to the working class. They gave us a $1,200 check and said, hey, here you go for 8 months. Enjoy. Well, unfortunately, it wasn't enough. They came out with $2.3 trillion that ended up being a giant corporate slush fund with no oversight. What we need is we need a People's Act. We need a stimulus that's going to give every single person in America $2,000 a month per person until the pandemic is over. That way people don't have to make that ridiculous decision of, do I send my kids to school and risk them getting COVID and bringing it back to myself and my family and their relatives who could possibly be more at risk and die from it? And, so that I can keep my job and keep my house and pay my bills? Or do I keep my children home and lose everything? These are not choices that we should have to make when we're living in the wealthiest nation in the history of the world. We need to take care of the people now. We took care of business. Now let's take care of people. They say, how are we going to pay for it? Well, we injected $6.5 trillion into Wall Street in March so that billionaires could liquidate their portfolios while the rest of the working class's 401ks just tumbled down. If we can afford to inject money into billionaires' pockets, then we can afford to inject money into the working class.
Yes. Derek Coleman says, "Good morning." He's not able to reply
He's
on
in
the
Facebook
feed.
jail.
Right.
Hey,
Morning.
I've been in Facebook jail myself for sharing our videos to too many people. So, but he is one of our most faithful supporters. All right, Dan, we got about 2.5 minutes before we go off the air. So, any final comments, anything that you may want to touch on, or anything that we did not cover that you'd like to say to everyone out there?
Well, I guess right now with election day coming up, make sure you go out and vote. Voting is just the most important duty we have as American citizens because you really have no room to complain about anything unless you go vote. We have to make sure that we are getting people to go out to the polling stations. We have, what was it, 140 million non-voters in our last election cycle. 140 million people didn't go vote. Well, it's amazing what we're seeing right now. We're seeing historic numbers of people absentee voting, early voting. So keep it up. Y'all are doing a great job. And I always like to plug two websites that I want you all to think about and to use. Number one, opensecrets.org. Open Secrets. Type in a politician's name. Look at where their money is coming from and look at where their money is going. After you do that, go to votesmart.org. Vote Smart. and type in that politician's name, and you can see how they voted throughout their entire career. Look at where their money's coming from and look at how they voted and decide, are they representing me or are they representing their special interests? And if you feel that they are not representing you and your family, run for office. It's hard because it's not easy being a candidate. It's stressful. It's takes a lot of time and money. It's hard, but we need people to run for office. We're having a problem in Arkansas where dozens, I think we had like 66 state seats unopposed. That means we have people that are representing you that didn't even have to get voted on. Run for office if you feel you're not being properly represented.
Well, and so Derek says you should run for governor.
I had thought about it. I had to make a hard decision of, do I want to represent Arkansans at the state level where I can do things like pushing hemp and pushing education, expunging crimes and things like that? Or do I want to run at the federal level where I can help Arkansans as well as the rest of Americans? And I felt that we need more progressive voices in the Senate right now. And we have to make sure that we are not only flipping the Senate and taking the majority away from one party, but making sure that we do have good representation there. I believe A.G. Rutledge is going to run for governor. She raised $8 million in her first quarter, more than 2 years before the election. There's going to be a lot of money in this race, and it's going to take a Democrat running against her that is willing to take special interest money in order to be able to compete that.
All
And
right, damn, I'm sorry, we got to leave it there. We're at about 20 seconds. We want to thank you for stopping by today. And of course, Kayla Kay and the Voice of Arkansas Minority Advocacy Council, we do not endorse, support, or oppose any candidate for office. This was provided for informational purposes only. This was actually an interview that we had booked months ago before he had to withdraw his campaign. But early voting is going on right now. Vote, 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 people. Not going to tell you who to vote for, but get out and vote today. This is the Kate, L-E-K, on 2.5 FM. All right, so now let me stop the live feed and the recording. All right, so see, stop.